Hey guys, Mr. Bowman here. Today's learning objective is in green and we are learning to convert between fractions, percentages and decimals. The key word in the video, I suppose, is that convert between the various forms we've stated. So let's just say we've got F for fractions, P for percentages and D for decimals. You need to know how to chop and change between the two. So for example, if you have a fraction, you need to know how to change that into a percentage, and you need to know how to change that into a decimal. If you have a decimal, you need to know how to change that into a fraction, and you also need to change that into a percentage. And lastly, if you have a percentage, you need to know, well, how can I make that a fraction? And how can I make that a decimal? So we're trying to convert between all the types that we have. So let's start with a fraction. So let's say you've been given a fraction and you've been asked to change that to a decimal. And we're going to look at 2/5. And to put it simply, all I do for this is I just go 2 divided by 5, and here my calculator would kick in, and that there just is 0.4. So trick. The fraction is just division as well. That's an easy way to do that. And then fraction to percentages, very similar to the decimal, except you're just going to need to pop the decimal, times it by 100 to get that percentage. So let's have a look at maybe 3/4. We need to times that by 100, and the way I would be doing that, I would convert that fraction to a decimal, which is 0.75, or 3 divided by 4. I would times that by 100, and that there gets to 75%. So that's the easy kind that we're going to be looking at in this video, going from fractions to either decimals or percentages. We're now going to want to go from the other directions, which will be a bit harder. And we'll start with the decimal of it because the percentage ones will be a bit similar as well. So let's say you've got a decimal and you're wanting to go to a fraction. So this is probably the hardest of them all. So let's say we've got 0.45. What would that be as its fraction? So the way I like to remember it is the first placeholder here, that there is tenths. The next one is hundredths. And if we keep on going, it might be thousandths, 10,000ths, millionths, or whatever it is. But because we have a number sitting here in the hundreds column, the denominator of our fraction will be 100. And we have 45 of them. So we're going to put a 45 on the top. So we've got 45 hundredths. We then just look to simplify, and I can see both of these have a 5 in common, so I'm going to go divide by 5, divide by 5. That there is going to be 9/20. And I can't see any other common factors in here, so I think that there would be my final answer. So let's have a look at another example. So let's say we've got 0.375. Same approach needs to be taken. Here is tenths. All right, so let's do that. So there are tenths, that one there, hundredths, and this one here, that's in the thousand spot. So we're looking for a denominator of 1,000, and our numerator 375, because we've got 375 of them. We then look to simplify. I can see both of them have a 5 in common, so we'll start off with that. So the bottom is going to be 200, and the top is going to be 65. Just realized that was not right, that there should be 75, shouldn't it? We can then look to simplify a bit more while they still both have a 5 in common. So that there is going to be 15/40, and yet again they've still got a 5 in common, so let's take that out. That there is going to be 3/8. So hopefully that makes sense, and that explains how to convert fractions, decimals to fractions. We'll then look at decimals to percentages, and this is going to be a real similar, the easier of the processes we're going to look at. So let's say we've got 0.367. Whenever you do that, all you got to do is times it by 100, and that will give you the percentage. And in this case, we're just going to move the decimal point back, which will go here, which will leave 36.7. So 36.7%. And we'll have another go, 0.25, just times it by 100. You could whip that straight into your calculator, or you can move the decimal point over 1, 2 decimal points there, which means that would be 25. So 25%. So that was how to deal with decimals. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pause the video. I'm going to clear a bit of working down the bottom to finish up with percentages. We're now going to have a look at percentages, and we're going to start off with the easy one. How do we go from a percentage to a decimal? And an example, let's say we got 65%. This time around, all we've got to do is divide it by 100, which is code for moving the decimal point back 2 spots. So that there would be 0.65 or 0.65. And if, for example, we had maybe 20%, divide by 100, go 1, 2, and that leaves us with 0.2. You can put 0.20 or 0.20, but 0.2 will suffice as well. And the final one, we're looking at going from a percentage to a fraction. This will probably be the hardest one, just because of the amount of steps that we need to do it, but it is something we can all get and understand. So let's have a look at, let's say 35%. What would that be as a fraction? So your first step is you actually need to go from percentage to decimal, and then once you're in the decimal form, you'll be able to switch it over to the fraction form. And we know what to do from the left. We are dividing by 100 to get to that form. So we're going to go 35 divided by 100, which is 0.35. Now that we're at this stage, we're actually going to be using our decimal to fraction skill that we learnt above. So we got tens over here, and we got hundreds over here. So that there is going to be 100 as the denominator. And we've got 35 of them up the top here, which is going to be 35 over 100. We then look to simplify that fraction with any common term. So we can see they both have a 5. That's going to give us 7 over 20 would be the fraction of that. We'll finish up with one last example, and then we'll call it a day and we'll move on to the next video. So let's have a look at 12.5%. What would that be as a fraction? So first step, we need to divide by 100, which is going to get us to 0.125. So you can put that in the calculator to check as well. We're now going to use the numbers. So that 10, well, that 1 is the tens, the 2 is hundreds, and the 5 is thousands. So we're going to be looking to have 1,000 as the denominator. The numerator will be 125. I know both of these have 125 in common as a factor, so I'll simplify that, and that's going to leave us with 1 over 8. So hopefully you found the video on converting between fractions, percentages, and decimals useful. You need to know how to go in any and which direction. Now that we've done this, let's pause. Let's make sure we got all the notes down. Now let's get in heaps and heaps and heaps of practice.